Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to Gita27, Krishna's warning to Arjuna. Everyone is making this mistake. Acharya 2024. Why desires keep you trapped? So I know there's some people that requested um, Acharya Gita video, and this one actually did catch my eye, and I might be going it in the reverse order, so I'm sorry about that, but that's the way we're gonna do it. So, anyways, I did skip over the very beginning, which the very beginning was just previews about a lot of the things inside. I don't want the spoiler, so let's just go ahead and get started.
The nature of the process of liberation is peculiar. You feel a certain angst within, a silent hollowness. And to begin with, you venture out in search of something that can plug the hollow. The beginning will always be towards the external. That is inevitable. It is a rule. Because that's how we are made. The eyes, all the senses, including the mind, they are by birth biologically programmed to look outside at the world.
I assume what he means here is by survival, because obviously things internally cannot kill it. Necessarily, obvious virus and all that is still all external, technically speaking. It's only whenever we get inside us that becomes a problem. So I believe this is how I'm interpreting what he's saying here is the sheer fact that the reason why we program externally is because the thing that will get us is external threats. You know, animals, humans, viruses, plants, whatever. Everything's external. And that's how we need to survive first and foremost, is to make sure that we are able to survive physically and then we can work internally.
When you are in need or in trouble, you wave towards the world and the throat cries out, "Help, help," again towards the world. If something troubles you at one place, you do not run inwards, you do not run to your insides, you run towards another external place. Whatsoever has attracted you has always been a subject of the senses. So that's how we are configured.
Mhm.
Hence, it is inevitable, we said, that the beginning will be in the outward direction. That's also how the Vedas begin. They look outwards. And that will always happen. That is not really a weakness. That is not a fault, not something to be ashamed of. That's a constitutional compulsion. Hmm? The way we are constituted. So that's how we said the Vedas also begin. They look at the world. If you look at the oldest of the Vedas, I have been revisiting it these days. Every few years or so, I return to the Vedas. So this would be my sixth or eighth or 10th, I don't know, some return to the Vedas. I was in Mumbai, and this time I purchased fresh copies of all the Vedas, even though I already have 2 or 3 copies. That's my way, to make a fresh beginning.
I mean, I don't know if all the Vedas are written the same, if they're all just copies of the original, or is there interpretations. I know, like in terms of at least Western religion, there's the King James version of the Bible. Then I'm assuming there's a regular Bible version. I don't know if the Vedas have this kind of thing. I know certain prominent figures in Advaita Vedanta has written their interpretation of the Gitas. The Brahma Sutras, I believe, is one. I just remember the names. I forget who the prominent figure was who has written his interpretation. There's also a student of his who has written the interpretation of the interpretation of the Gitas, which is kind of strange, but you know, I kind of wonder about that. You know, like it's like it's kind of like there's a game in like an elementary school. It's called Telephone, where you say a word and it gets passed down, but somehow it gets lost in translation because someone makes a fool of themselves. But if you make an interpretation of an interpretation of an interpretation of an interpretation, how much of the message is lost there, you know? But obviously, this is only a second interpretation. But you should always go by the source, and perhaps even after that, then go to the I would say the first interpretation, maybe the second at most. I don't know, just because the original, obviously, I think is always the best way to understand the source. And sometimes you do need help. That's the reason for swamis and maybe gurus to help you understand the meaning behind the books or the phrases in the books.
And I'm revisiting the Rigveda. And every time you go to them, there are fresh insights.
Hmm. Oh well, I'm guessing when he reads it, he even though it's the same sentence, is that he gets a new understanding of it. It's kind of like me. The reason why I watch many different gurus and swamis because they have different insights on things, and I some of them will I understand a little bit better versus in terms of the topic versus other topics, you know.
What happens is that we look at the whole road from the point of view of the destination. We look at the climb, standing at the summit. And then the climb will always look a little inferior, a little useless, a little abhorrible, no? Lowly climb. What we forget is that without the climb, all the ups and downs, all the meandering, the summit wouldn't have been possible. So those who are exposed to Vedant, when they look at Karmakand, it is a bit prakritic that the approach sometimes is of condensation. With a condescending eye, we
Oh,
look at Karmakand part.
Sorry, he said condensation, which is moisture on the windows. Did he say that? I'm gonna rewind that. That's condensation. Yeah, that's. Or did he mean condescension? Condescension, which means condescending, a version of condescending. Condensation. It confused me. I was like, I'm not sure how to interpret that. Sorry.
Hmm? With a condescending eye, we
Oh, sorry.
approach sometimes is of condensation. Hmm? With a condescending eye, we
So he did mean to say, I believe, condescending or condescension or something like that. Basically, condensation,
hmm?
condescending. I believe.
With a condescending eye, we look at karmakand part, which is both understandable and also childish. It's understandable because indeed Vedant is the summit. The philosophical rigor of Vedant cannot be matched by the Samhita or the Brahman part. Hmm? So, in that sense, it's understandable. But what is also to be understood is that the Vedas are an organic growth. You look at Prakriti, you look at all its elements, and whenever you initiate the journey with Prakriti, the approach is of desire. So you look at Prakriti with desire. So the various forces and forms and effects of Prakriti, you give very different, very interesting names, and you associate charming stories with them. Hmm? That's what the initial part of the Vedas is about. And because the whole thing will come from desire, man is a creature of desire, is he not? So, therefore, to each of these names, forms, forces, you go and you ask for things. Hmm? What things? The same things that we today ask for. Uh, Nothing has changed, and that's why spiritual literature from ancient times remains relevant even today. So, the things that you ask for today are the same things that are being asked for in the mantras of Rig Veda. 10,000 mantras there in more than 1,000 suktas. 10 mandals, and more than 95% of them are about desire. Some natural force you pick up: Indra, Vayu, Agni. Hmm? Even the famous Gayatri mantra is addressed to Surya, hmm? Savita. So some natural force, and then what do you ask? Please, more crops. Hmm? Please, longer life and disease-free bodies for me and my family and my clan. Please wreak destruction on that other tribe. Destroy them fully. Agni, can you do that for me? So these things. And these things, once you go deeper into them, the depth itself enables you to surpass them. Because when you initiated the journey, the purpose was very clear. We said there was an internal angst. And Indra or Vayu or Varun or Agni or Surya. Hmm? They are incapable of healing the angst. Hmm? And then, only then, you are forced to turn inwards. That's what happens in the Vedas, and that's also what happens in the life of every seeker.
Is he saying that in terms of this, at least when you look at Agni, and I guess now I'm familiar with some of the Agni at the very least because of a game called, can't remember the game anymore. It's a MOBA game, but it does have gods in it. Um, but anyways, is this a like a bhakti follower that seeks God and realize that God is not there or it's not enough, and then now decides to turn inwards for the seeking of the end of suffering? Like Agni's not good enough, or is he saying like in terms of, I don't know the other names he gave. I know Agni's, I believe, the god of fire, or perhaps a form of destruction with fire. I'm not sure. I didn't study the deities of India, so I'm not sure. I know in terms, at least the game, I don't know if it's true or not, but it deals with fire. So I don't know if it's destruction with fire or just fire itself, god of fire, and fire being perhaps destructive. Maybe I'm not sure. But anyways, that he has anger, and this anger is not being satiated, not through the different, perhaps the different gods here. So he turns inwards. I think that's what Acharya here is trying to say. Let me know if I got it right. I'm saying this so that you can correct me if I'm wrong, and you understand how I'm interpreting what he's saying here, whether it makes sense or not.
The initial movement is always towards the outside, right? And your life can become like the Vedas, it can mirror the Vedas, it can resemble the Vedas. If you can do what the Upanishads do, the Upanishads take a very courageous flight. Hmm? While the Karmakand part is busy with nature worship, offering sacrifices and asking for favors. The Upanishads, suddenly then, it's not really sudden, but in the text it does appear a bit abrupt. The Upanishads suddenly declare nothing doing. If I keep asking for fulfillment of desires from Prakriti, I am never going to have it. I'll forever remain dissatisfied, and I don't want to just end up discontented. I'll have to look inwards. I'll have to ask myself, who is the one who is always begging? No, that's a tremendous change from the initial plane where you are continuously saying, oh, please, DT, you come over. Here is the yajna sacrifice. Can you come over and sit here and accept my offering? Here is the somras for you. I know you love it. Please take this, please take that, and bless me in return. The Upanishads just move beyond all that. No nature worship there. No effort to extract any kind of favor from Prakritic forces. Upanishads say, I have understood. Who am I and why do I relate to Prakriti in such and such ways? Are you getting it? Now, both these parts are very, very important. I cannot even say one is more important than the other. Boarding is important, and so is deboarding. Checking in is important, and so is How do I declare that checking out is more important than checking in? How will you check out if you never checked in? Are you getting? Though when you are checking out or deboarding, it appears that this is the higher act, because this is the final thing. This is what completes and culminates. But that's not so. It's like taking a ferry to the other shore. A boat ride. Obviously, when you reach there, then you leave the boat. And it will appear that leaving the boat is the final thing that helps you land at the destination. And that's true. If someone were to take a snapshot, he will say, see, this is the final thing. This man is stepping out from the ferry. Right? You got into the boat and then you got out of the boat. Getting out of the boat is the moment when you land on the destination. So it appears great. But what is also true is that you needed to get on. You also needed to cover the entire distance across the river. Are you getting it? But the problem occurs when one gets so enamored with the boat ride that he refuses to leave the boat. Obviously, I'm assuming that first of all you took the boat. The vast majority of people are so satisfied at their own shore that they will just refuse to accept any boat or the overtures of any boatman. It would be sensible, logical. We can only guess, but probably factual to say that it would have been difficult to reach the Upanishads without the nature worship part. You need to be disillusioned before you get disentangled. Remember Nirasha? Nirashi Nirmamo. How will you get disillusioned, free of hope, if first of all there is no hope? Now we all do remain hopeful since birth itself. That's right. But the beauty, the courage of the Vedas lies in the fact that they said, fine, if Prakriti is where we are to get our satisfaction from, let's go the whole distance. If Prakriti is what gives us what we want, then let's accept the forces of nature as gods and goddesses. No? No hypocrisy. If I live for the sake of my desires, then let me turn the objects of my desires into gods and goddesses. Now, this is a very honest approach and a bold one. We all do want stuff, but we never have the rigor and the courage to simply accept that the object that we want is indeed our God. Right? You might be dying after something, but will you ever openly accept that the stuff that you are dying after is your de facto God? You will not accept, right? Inwardly, yes, that thing is indeed your God and is ruling you, commanding you. But you will never accept it, not to others, not to yourself, that the thing is your God.
Hmm. I I was confused. Like when they're saying about that object that's your God, I was like, what do you mean? Like I don't see things like that. How do I perceive that? Understand what he's trying to say there? And then now I think I realize what he's saying is because you desire it so much that you'll obey whatever it takes to obtain that object, to, in a sense, to obtain that God. So, for example, you want, I don't know, what's a fancy brand name? I guess Gucci? I think that's a fancy brand name, I'm sure. Imagine you want a Gucci purse or a Lamborghini. I don't know. You want it so much that you'll work yourself to death to obtain that object. So therefore, it is like that object is saying, work, work, and get me. And you obey it. I'm assuming this is what it means. Again, the reason why I'm speaking this out, I'm trying to understand and interpret what he's saying, and I'm speaking it out. So hopefully you can correct me if I'm wrong. But that's how I'm understanding that so far.
The Vedas just honestly accept. They say, okay, fire is so important, it gives us protection. Think of those times. Think of those times. Fire used to be so important, and fire used to be the vehicle for fulfillment of so many desires: food, protection, illumination. Come on, everything. Plus, man was not entirely savage by the time we came to the Rig Veda.
Is that really a desire though? The fire, protection, and food. I mean, do we not say that shelter in a lot of senses protection? Isn't that more of a need, and food a need, and clean water a need, than say a desire? I mean, we want it for sure. We want food, we want shelter, and we want water, but it's a little bit different than say wanting a Gucci bag or wanting a Lamborghini. You know, we can survive without a Gucci bag. We can survive without a Lamborghini. We can't really survive without shelter because it gets too hot, too cold, raining, elements, the animals. We look at shelters as barriers of, well, between us and whatever it is externally. Then food, obviously, we can't survive without food, and we can't survive without clean water. So, is it really a desire? I guess that's a bit confusing to me whenever it says that. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to pause it right here and let me know. So I've asked a few questions, so I'm going to keep it the same about the same amount of time as the end of the video. But I think this is a good stop point. I think I did ask enough questions here. I'm going to start over in this little cut right here. Fire used to be so important in vehicle for use vehicles. Fulfillment of so many desire. Hold on, let's go here.
For fulfillment of so many desires: food, protection, illumination. Come on, everything.
Yeah, so that's really weird to say that fire or food, shelter, protection, illumination, so we can see and navigate as in desires. I mean, I get it to some degree, but I always put food, shelter, and clean water as something separate from wants, desires, because these are things that you need to live. You can literally have food, water, and shelter and nothing else, and you'll be perfectly fine. You can't have a Lamborghini and be perfectly fine. You can't have a Gucci purse and be perfectly fine. You know, you can't have these expensive luxury items and be perfectly fine because you those things can't keep you alive. So very interesting. So in the next episode, I'll definitely start off about right there. I think 2008. 2008. All right. Anyways, let me know if I've understood him correctly so far. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, the sign down below. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next vid.